Here we're looking at the different classes of IP addresses. Now this is fundamental. If you're working in network engineering, you need to know these 5 classes of IP addresses, and you need to know the values in the very first octet. This identifies the class of the IP address. The IP address ranges that we're allowed to use for our networks live in the class A, B, and C. Now these would be your standard host or server type of IP addresses. They will be either class A, class B, or class C. I've identified that multicast lives in class D. And remember, that ranges from 224 to 239. We talked about this earlier when we looked at Internet Group Management Protocol, IGMP, or multicast. The class E is experimental, and it's reserved for research purposes. It's not usable in your addressing scheme. So class A addresses run from 0.0.0.0 through actually 126.255.255.255. That's a class A. And you notice the important thing to realize here is it's the value in the very first octet that identifies what the class of the IP address is. So the first octet in this case would range from 0 to 126. That identifies this address as coming from originally a class A network. A class B network starts at 128 and ranges to 191. So 128.0.0.0 through 191.255.255.255, this is a class B address. So again, with a class B address, the very first value, the very first octet value, identifies this as a class B. And finally, the class C ranges from 192.0.0.0 to 223.255.255.255. That's a class C IP address. And again, it's the value in the very first octet that identifies this as the class C. Now, the default mask for a class A network is 255.0.0.0. If you understand CIDR notation, that's classless internet domain routing, addressing, CIDR, you'd use a /8 subnet mask. The class B addresses use a 255.255.0.0 subnet mask or a /16. And the class C uses a 255.255.255.0 subnet mask or a /24 subnet mask. The class D, using multicast, doesn't specify a subnet mask other than a /32. This is a single IP address that is this multicast address. So it very often will use a /32 mask. And again, the class E we're not allowed to use for our addressing schemes.